YouTube. Timesheet. Facebook. No.
Oh, yeah, that's true. That's why I got overtime over hours. But sometimes I'm annoyed because sometimes I don't know what their system is, but sometimes they approve half of the ones that you sign. And they'll pay out on those ones, but then not the other ones, but this time they didn't pay out.
Star Trek Prodigy Episode 7 First Contact Review Strange New World Indeed Review Star Trek Prodigy Episode 107 First Contact. After the euphoric high generated from last week's nostalgic Kobayashi, Prodigy's next installment is a bit less exciting, turning its focus inward to one of our young heroes. It's an episode that shows our crew seeking out new life, the most important Starfleet mission, but without the best intentions. As they try to unravel the mystery of why Chakotay, Robert Beltran, was the previous captain of the Protostar, and what happened to his crew. Down. Review Star Trek Prodigy Episode.
the only
Do you want me to stand this up for you? Are you currently recording on this or are you just watching?
no,
Oh, you're over here. You can see myself on the. Whoa, how are you doing all this?
moment, so
The chat?
that with the video won't be
What? Okay. I'm going to go fix my hair. I'll be
okay.
back to feed you in like 30 minutes.
Star Trek Prodigy Episode 106 Kobayashi Review Learning from the Past. Review Star Trek Prodigy Episode 106 Kobayashi. You've heard the saying you don't know where you're going until you know where you've been, and it seems Star Trek Prodigy's creators have, too. The show's mid-season premiere embodies that saying, as the young captain of the Protostar learns how to be a great leader to his fledgling crew thanks to some of Starfleet's most heroic figures. Prodigy, the first 3D animated Star Trek show, blew away our expectations during its initial 5-episode run last year, and its return shows that we can look forward to more of the same beauty, intrigue, and respect for its roots that made the first 5 episodes so great to watch. Kate Mulgrew as Janeway. After traveling 4,000 light years during the harrowing escape from the Diviner, John Noble, using the Protostar's special warp drive, self-appointed Captain Dal, Brett Gray, is faced with what to do next. His crew, including Zero, Angus Emery, and Jancom Pog, Jason Mantzoukas, advocate for contacting the Federation to ensure safety from the Diviner. But Dal ignores them because he doesn't believe the Federation would help people who hijack their ship, and he wants to enjoy their newfound freedom. As they explore the ship looking for Merv, D. Bradley Baker, Dal and Jancom come across the holodeck, and, guided by holographic Janeway, Kate Mulgrew, find the famous Kobayashi Maru program. Janeway warns that Dal is not ready for such a challenge, but Dal, headstrong and stubborn as always, started anyway, thinking completion of the simulation will earn him the crew's respect. Brett Gray as Dal and Jason Mantzoukas as Jancom Pog. What the audience gets next is a treat. Taking place aboard a replication of a Galaxy-class starship, Dal gets to choose his crew for the challenge, telling the computer to give him some of the best you've got. A few familiar faces materialize at two stations on the bridge. Helping Dal and the Kobayashi Maru is Tozira Nyota Hura, Tozira Spock, Otto, TNG era Beverly Crusher, and, once Jankum leaves, Toes movie era Montgomery Scott. Moreover, these characters are voiced via archive footage from the various actors, so we get lines from Nichelle Nichols, Leonard Nimoy, Renee Auberjonoy, Gates McFadden, and James Doohan. Request to come aboard. It's quite a pleasant surprise to hear these legacy characters, and what that help that symbolizes not only how the young captain is learning from Starfleet's heroes, but metaphorically how Prodigy is respecting its roots, something we've known this show doing before. But even Starfleet's finest can't help the brash captain complete the infamous no-win scenario, and it's to Dan's credit and his frustration that he repeatedly tries and fails the test. Ultimately, it's clear Del can't beat the odds no matter how creative he gets. But that's not the point of the scenario, of course. What does result from his experience in the program is a short but enlightening exchange with Spock, where Del realizes something he's been missing as captain: the humility to listen to his crew. The fact that Del learns this lesson through Spock, one of Star Trek's most prominent figures, will surely make any fan's heart swell with joy. And kudos to Prodigy's writers for finding relevant quotes from Nimoy's various appearances to carry Del's story home. You're captain of this ship. You can't afford the luxury of being anything less than perfect. If you do, they lose faith, and you lose command. But I'm not perfect. I've never captained a ship, and I've never had a crew. What do I know? That the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. Spock, using audio from the enemy within, to Dal. Outside the holodeck, Gwyn, Ella Purnell, is still grappling with how her encounter with her dad went down on the murder planet. His quest for the protostar outweighed his love for her daughter, which is especially confusing for Gwyn considering she, or anyone else, for that matter, doesn't even know what makes the protostar so special. Asking Janeway doesn't help, either, as the hologram's memory banks have that information locked out. Holodeck. As in holographic simulation room, one thing that is revealed to the audience is how Gwyn came to be the Diviner's so-called progeny. Years ago, the Diviner was in dire straits. He was the last of his species, and the key to his survival seemed to be in finding the protostar. However, since the search for the ship was already proving to be exhaustive, he chose to create an offspring, Gwyn, as a failsafe. Gwyn ultimately discovers that information on the protostar's original mission is encrypted within Janeway's memory banks in the language of Gwyn's homeworld, which is mighty odd for a Federation ship. Using her keen language skills, Gwyn unlocks tons of data about the ship and its mission, including a major discovery: our young heroes weren't the protostar's first crew. Indeed, the ship was previously under the command of, wait for it, Chakotay, Robert Beltran. But we'll have to wait until next week to learn more. Chakotay. He's captain? Taken together, Kobayashi is an excellent return for Prodigy, and is sure to delight new and returning fans alike. Creators Dan and Kevin Hagman have given a major head nod to Star Trek of old, and having Dal cross paths with these legacy characters, albeit holographically, was such a great decision. While this entry will likely be remembered for the legacy cameos, let's not forget about the major questions arising from this episode. Why was Chakotay commanding the protostar on a mission to the Delta Quadrant, with a holographic Janeway at his side? How did the ship end up entombed on Tars Lamora? And what secret did the protostar hold that was vital to the Diviner's continued survival? Straight facts. While we'll understand if some people may negatively note the noticeable audio quality difference between 1960s style recording and more modern technology, we thought it was a touching detail to include in this episode. It shows how long Star Trek has been around, and how those characters have remained influential and relevant decades after their original appearance. This show is masterful when it comes to little details. Pause the show whenever user interface is showing, like the protocol display or the captain's chair display. Both shown at the beginning of the episode. and you'll see what we mean. Dal is shown playing the same Tyrian game as shown in the Next Generation's The Game. One holodeck program Dal and Jankom experience is called Andoria 4, which seemingly takes place on the Andorian homeworld, as seen prominently in Enterprise as the Anner. Another holodeck program shown in this episode takes place on cdehjnvbn, the same planet where Captain Kirk marooned Khan and his crew in Space Seed, and then later seen in The Wrath of Khan. Janeway also shows Dal and Jankom the program depicting a cow-ify gladiatorial match, the same kind of fight Kirk and Spock experienced in Amok Time. This scene also features a bit of the iconic soundtrack from that episode. Shown on the list of holodeck programs is Deadwood, which likely references the town in South Dakota where the Wild West Hello program from A Fistful of Datas took place. Also seen is the program called Paxo Resort, which is the same resort from Trelax featured in Neelix's program in Warlord. The screen shown on the bridge view screen that details the Kobayashi Maru scenario for Dal and crew is modeled after the same display seen in The Wrath of Khan. Dal channels his inner hero from Star Trek 2009 when he yells "Fire everything" during the simulation. Surely Murph's indestructibility will be useful later on, right? Dal's nicknames for his crew: Earpiece, Ahura, Mustache, Scotty, Jelly Man, Otto, Pointy Ears, Spock, and Big Red, Crusher. It appears a live-action explosion, likely from the undiscovered country, was composited into this episode for when the bird that prays explode. Likewise, instead of featuring the Enterprise D as a Prodigy-style G model, this episode shows that ship from what looks like an episode of the remastered TNG. Stay tuned to trendnews.net for all the latest news on Star Trek, Prodigy, Star Trek, Discovery, Star Trek, Strange New Worlds, Star Trek, Picard, Star Trek, Lower Decks, and more. You can follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Kyle Hodiniak has been a lifelong Star Trek fan, and isn't ashamed to admit that Star Trek V, The Final Frontier and Star Trek, Nemesis are his favorite Star Trek movies. You can follow Kyle on Twitter. Features. Star Trek. Prodigy just went all in on franchise Easter eggs. With one exception, all the dialogue spoken by the holodeck characters in Prodigy's Kobayashi comes from existing Star Trek episodes and films. This Star Trek Prodigy article contains spoilers through episode 6. For its first 5 episodes, Star Trek Prodigy has mostly established its own identity, free and separate from the rest of the Trek franchise. Yes, a holographic Captain Janeway is an essential part of the crew, and yes, several episodes have touched on themes we've seen before. But, in terms of making nitty-gritty references to the larger canon of Trek, Prodigy has kept things pretty low-key. Until now. After taking a brief hiatus, Prodigy Season 1 is back with Episode 6 titled Just Kobayashi. In it, Brett Gray, takes a 24th century version of the famous Kobayashi Maru test, and in doing so, brings along some classic Trek characters for the ride. And, if some of these lines of the dialogue sounded familiar, they should have. With one exception, all the dialogue spoken by Dal's greatest hits holodeck crew comes from existing Star Trek episodes and films. Here's where every single line was pulled from. When Dal decides to run the Kobayashi Maru test, the computer gives him the option of choosing his crew. He asks for the computer to give him a random selection of the best, which means he gets Spock, Uhura, Otto, Dr. Crusher, and, later, Scotty. Representatives from Paramount Plus have confirmed that Gates McFadden did record brand new dialogue as Dr. Crusher for this episode, meaning all of Crusher's lines here are brand new. But since Leonard Nimoy, James Doohan and Renee Upper-Johnoy are sadly no longer alive, all of their dialogue is stock, and Otto is archival. Didahura. Although Mitchell Nichols is alive, she is, for the most part, retired. So, that means most of this classic Trek dialogue is reappropriated for existing episodes and films. But which ones? In the order in which the characters speak in the episode, here are their lines and which episodes those lines were first spoken, along with several ironies along the way. Ahura, all decks standing by, sir. Top articles about Con-Tact V147953 read more the enduring legacy of the Mothman Prophecies Den of Geek. This comes from Star Trek, the original series, specifically the episode Balance of Terror. This is one of the first big starship combat episodes for Trek, and as you'll see, a lot of these quotes were pulled from Balance of Terror. Spock, request permission to come aboard. Spock says this in Star Trek, the motion picture, after his shuttle docks with the Enterprise. Spock, Outpost 2 coming into sensor range, Captain. Have a blip on the motion sensor. Get the best of Den of Geek delivered right to your inbox. These are two pieces of Spock dialogue stitched together from Balance of Terror, which, notably, did not involve combat with the Klingons, but instead, the Romulans. Ahura, Captain, I'm getting something on the Distress Channel. Appropriately, this line comes from Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, and Ahura speaks it at the start of the film, during the Kobayashi Maru test. Kobayashi Maru distress call. This is straight from the opening of The Wrath of Khan. It should be noted that, although the Kobayashi Maru has been referenced heavily since The Wrath of Khan, we've only seen characters taking the actual test twice before this episode of Prodigy. The first time was in The Wrath, and the second time was in the 2009 reboot film. Prodigy marks the first time we see a 24th century version of the test. Spock, the neutral zone. This quote seems to be taken out of context from Balance of Terror, in which Spock says, "Steady on 111 Mark 14. Back on their original course, Captain, toward the neutral zone." It should be noted, however, that the neutral zone Spock refers to in the original line was the Romulan neutral zone, not the Klingon neutral zone. Spock, entry into which by either side, would constitute an act of war. Again, this comes from Balance of Terror, and again, Spock was talking about the other neutral zone. Otto, what does it matter? Some of Otto's exact lines are harder to pin down, including his initial harumph. The first part of this line, in which he says "excuse me," is also hard to track down. But it is stitched up with the line "what does it matter," which is taken from the Deep Space Nine episode, Shadow Play. In the context of that episode, Otto originally said, "if she's not real, what does it matter?" This referenced a holographic person, which is ironic in this situation, considering the Otto speaking the line this time is a hologram. Spock, or on what this vessel fails to do. Once again, you guessed it, it's Balance of Terror. And the original line, which has been snipped here, was or on what this vessel fails to do, Doctor. Ahura, I don't care whether it's allowed or not. I will not do it. This line comes from the original series episode The Gamesters of Triskelion. In context, Ahura is refusing a training exercise. The she's referring to is that idea, refusal. Otto, you can order me all you want, as of now, I'm resigning my commission. Otto actually threatens to resign a lot in the course of Deep Space Nine, making this one a little tricky to pin down. He tells Sisko he's ready to resign in both The Passenger and The Search. But this line does not come from either of those episodes. Instead, it comes from Heart of Stone, and Otto was speaking to Kira, not Sisko. The original dialogue goes like this. Peacemaker Episode 5 Review, Monkey Dory. Kira, Constable, I gave you a direct order. Otto, you can order me all you want. As of now, I'm resigning my commission. Otto, that's not good enough. It may well start a war. When Otto says that's not good enough, it may well start a war. There's two lines being combined here from two different episodes. In the DS9 episode The Way of the Warrior, Otto says that's not good enough. If one of my people were loose on the station for that long, there's no telling how much damage they could do. And in Call to Arms, he says, if we try to stop those convoys, it may very well start a war. Otto, 2 Klingon ships closing aft of U.S. Bearing 136 Mark IV. This one is tricky. Otto never actually says this exact line in Deep Space Nine. Instead, in What You Leave Behind, he says we have 2 Jem'Hadar ships coming aft of us, bearing 136 Mark IV. So, it looks like the Prodigy folks have swapped Jem'Hadar for Klingon. But, the bearing 136 Mark IV gives it away. Ahura, battle stations, all hands battle stations. This is from the TOS episode The Enterprise Incident, which, again, did not deal with Klingons, but instead, Romulans. Spock, we are surrounded. This is also from the Enterprise Incident, and in the context of that episode, Spock is talking about 3 Romulan ships surrounding the Enterprise after they crossed into the Romulan neutral zone. Spock, photon torpedoes locking on target. This line comes from the TOS episode, The Ultimate Computer. In it, the full line was, Captain, photon torpedoes locking on target. Full power. But, interestingly, Spock is referring to the automated M5 computer performing this function against the will of the crew. This is the second time the M5 has been referenced indirectly in a new Star Trek episode in the span of just 2 weeks. In the Discovery mid-season finale. But to connect, Dr. Kovac, David Cronenberg, referenced the M5 obligatory when he said, there's a prescription against a fully sentient AI being fully integrated into Starfleet systems. A rule that could only exist because of the ultimate computer. Spock, Captain, are you quite alright? This comes from the TOS episode Journey to Babel. The thing Spock was concerned about in the original episode was the idea that Kirk had recently been stabbed and was suddenly back on duty. Otto, I'm not going to let this happen again. Not again. This line is from the DS9 episode Things Past, and in it, Otto was reliving a memory of having sentenced innocent people to death. Spock, I believe he has lost the capacity for rational decision. This one also comes from the TOS episode The Enterprise Incident. Spock was referring to Kirk's ability to make decisions, which was later revealed to be a hoax. Ahura, yes, he's infuriating, sir. How can you stand it? This one is a deep cut. It comes from the TOS episode, The Mark of Gideon. The character Ahura was calling infuriating was a councilman named Hadin. Scotty, thank you, sir. And call me Scotty. The version of Scotty who appears in this simulation is rocking the monster maroon uniform from the classic feature films, making him an older version of a TOS character, which is an interesting contrast with Ahura and Spock, who appear in their TOS uniforms. However, Scotty's line "Thank you, sir," and "Call me Scotty" comes from the Next Generation episode Relics, in which Scotty was talking to Captain Picard. This fact is funny for a few reasons. The simulation in Prodigy takes place on the Enterprise D, and other than Crusher, the only character there who actually set foot on the D was Scotty. On top of that, there's another odd Discovery coincidence. In the recent Season 4 episode Stormy Weather, the entire crew of Discovery beamed themselves into the padded corners of the ship, which was a direct reference to Scotty's comeback in the episode Relics. Ahura, all channels are totally jammed, Captain. This one is a great reference, because the line is connected to Khan, but not from the Wrath of Khan. Instead, this Ahura quote is lifted from Space Seed, the first TOS episode with Khan ever.
In the context of space, Seed Con had cut off air and communication to the bridge. Scotty, the plasma intercooler's gone, the engines are overheating. You'd think these classic Scotty-ish lines would come from TOS or one of the films, but again, these back-to-back quotes are taken from the Next Generation episode, Relics. Scotty is talking to Geordi about the scout ship, the Janolan, which has been wedged into some giant doors of the Dyson sphere, allowing the Enterprise to escape. Fun fact, James Doohan has more lines in Relics than he has in any one episode of TOS. Odo, frankly, I fail to see any point at all. Funnily enough, this Odo quote also comes from that hologram DS9 episode, Shadowplay. In context, he was originally talking to Dax, saying, "Frankly, Lieutenant, I fail to see any point in your story at all, except perhaps to illustrate the foolish humanoid preoccupation with romantic coupling." Scotty, you've got it, Captain. This comes from the TOS classic The Doomsday Machine, in which Kirk asks for more power to make the USS Constellation move. Scotty's original line was, "You've got it, Captain. Just enough to move us. I can't do better." Spock, sweeping the area of Outpost 2, sensor reading indefinite. Outpost 2. Spock talking about things the sensors can't pick up. Oh, you know it's another line from Balance of Terror. The reason why the sensor reading is indefinite is because of the Romulan cloaking device. Uhura, sensors are picking up the Klingon battlecruiser rapidly closing on the station. This comes from the mega-famous TOS episode, The Trouble with Tribbles. The giveaway here is that Uhura says closing on the station, which, in the original context, referred to Deep Space Station K7, better known to some of us as Tribble Town. Spock, transporter operational captain. This line also comes from the TOS episode, The Doomsday Machine. In that context, Spock was trying to get Kirk to beam off of a ship that was doomed, the USS Constellation. Spock, my congratulations, Captain. This one comes from the TOS episode, The Changeling, in which Kirk talks a rogue space probe into destroying itself. The full original line is, "My congratulations, Captain." A dazzling display of logic. Spock, am I correct in my assumption that you are disturbed by what you consider to be a failure on your part? This quote comes from a super underrated TOS episode called Obsession, and Spock wasn't talking to Kirk. Instead, Spock was speaking to Ensign Gravik, and in his own Spock way, was trying to make the younger officer feel better. Spock, and what is it that makes one man an exceptional leader? This is a partial quote from the TOS episode, The Enemy Within, in which Spock points out that Kirk's negative side is what helps make him good at being a decisive person. The full quote is, "Yes, and what is it that makes one man an exceptional leader?" We see indications that it's his negative side which makes him strong, that his evil side, if you will properly controlled and disciplined, is vital to his strength. Spock, Captain, no disrespect intended, but you must surely realize you can't announce the full truth to the crew. You're the captain of this ship. You haven't the right to be vulnerable in the eyes of the crew. You can't afford the luxury of being anything less than perfect. If you do, they lose faith and you lose command. This quote also comes from The Enemy Within, but the context Spock was referring to was very specific. In that episode, Kirk was going to reveal to the crew he'd been split into two people, one good and evil. And Spock was like, no, don't do that, it's gonna freak everyone out. Spock, the needs of the many. This one is easy. Spock says this to Kirk in The Wrath of Khan. Spock, it is the only logical conclusion. During this last part, we get Spock from several eras. This line comes from the Next Generation episode, Unification 2, in which Spock was telling a Romulan named Prodigy that he had figured out exactly how Prodigy had betrayed him. Spock, in your own way, you are as stubborn as another captain of the Enterprise I once knew. Back to back, Unification 2. This line was spoken by Spock in the same TNG episode and it was aimed directly at Jean-Luc Picard. This line is very good, but everyone always forgets Picard's mic drop retort, then I'm in good company, sir, and the way he says sir is just so badass. It's not sir like a rank, but sir like up yours. It's amazing. Did we mention Patrick Stewart is a good actor? Spock, live long and prosper. This one is kind of hard to pin down, but after some checking it sounds like this is Spock from the 2009 Star Trek saying, live long and prosper to Chris Pine's Captain Kirk. We're not 100% sure about this. Spock does say, live long and prosper in 4 TOS episodes, in 1 Tush episode, in TNG's Unification, and in 3 of the classic films. This sounds like an older Spock saying it, but it's not 100% clear. Interestingly enough, when Prodigy takes place, Spock is totally living long and prospering. As of 2383, Spock is alive and likely still living on Romulus. Presumably, Scotty is still alive at this point in the timeline, too. What are the chances he took his shuttlecraft to Romulus and visited Spock? Now that's an animated short trek sweet pity see. Next, 360p 720p HD 1080p HD Auto 360p about Con-Tact V147953 about Con-Tact V147953. Star Trek Prodigy airs new episodes on Paramount Plus. Written by Ryan Britt. Ryan Britt is a longtime contributor to Den of Geek.
Please love and love. um, well,